First, let's start with this case. 15 years ago, my life changed dramatically when my father, then 45, announced he was leaving my mother for his 25-year-old girlfriend. The betrayal was devastating enough, but then I discovered he had completely drained my college fund, $97,000 that my grandparents had saved for me, to take his new girlfriend on exotic vacations and buy her expensive gifts. When I confronted him about stealing my education money, he was dismissive. "You're young. You'll figure it out," he said. "I'll pay you back someday when I'm more stable." He claimed he needed this chance at happiness and that I was being selfish for not understanding. I worked multiple jobs through college, took out loans, and lived on ramen noodles while seeing photos of him and his girlfriend in Paris, Rome, and the Maldives on social media. My mother was heartbroken, having dedicated 23 years to their marriage only to be discarded for someone younger than her own daughter. Despite the hardship, I graduated, built a successful career in finance, and methodically paid off my student loans. I'm now completely debt-free with a comfortable savings account and healthy investment portfolio. I haven't spoken to my father in years, though I occasionally heard updates through family members about his lavish lifestyle with his young girlfriend. Last month, he showed up at my office unannounced, looking significantly older and wearing worn-out clothes. His girlfriend had apparently cleaned out their joint accounts and disappeared with a younger man, leaving him with nothing but debt. He had no retirement savings, no assets, and was facing eviction from his apartment. He wanted me to support him financially, claiming it was my duty as his child to ensure he had a comfortable retirement. When I refused, he became hostile, saying I was being vindictive about ancient history and that I needed to grow up and let go of the past. The situation escalated when I received court documents. He was actually trying to sue me for emotional damages and elder neglect, claiming I had a legal obligation to support him in his old age. His case was built entirely on manipulated family photos and emotional appeals about parent-child relationships. The judge was utterly unimpressed. Not only was the case dismissed, but my father was reprimanded for wasting the court's time. He's now working as a grocery store bagger at 60, living in a tiny studio apartment while I just bought my dream house. My mother thinks it's perfect karma, but some relatives are saying I'm being cruel by letting my elderly father struggle when I have the means to help him. They say he's learned his lesson and deserves a second chance. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. The absolute audacity of this man. He stole nearly $100,000 from his own child, abandoned his family, lived it up for years with his mistress, and now thinks he's entitled to more of your money? And he tried to sue you for not funding his retirement after he stole your education fund? The karmic justice here is chef's kiss perfect. Let him bag groceries and think about his choices. You're not in the wrong. Let's break this down. Cheated on your mom, left his family for someone younger than his daughter, stole $97,000 from his child, spent years living lavishly while you struggled, never paid you back despite promises, only contacted you when he needed money, tried to sue you when you refused, and some relatives think you're being cruel? They're welcome to support him if they're so concerned about his welfare. You're not in the wrong. Ancient history, he says? Funny how he wants you to forget about him stealing $97,000, but expects you to remember your duty as his child. He made his choices, multiple times. He chose to cheat, chose to steal your money, chose to spend years living beyond his means, and chose to trust someone who was clearly using him. Now he can choose to enjoy the consequences. Next up, my husband and I spent months choosing the perfect name for our first child. We finally settled on a unique but meaningful name that had special significance to both our families. When I was 7 months pregnant, my cousin, also pregnant, due a month before me, found out about our choice at a family dinner. She immediately caused a scene, claiming she had dibs on the name since childhood. I had never once heard her mention this name in our 27 years of growing up together. When I refused to give up the name, she stormed out of the dinner in tears. 2 weeks later, at my baby shower, things got worse. Just as we were about to start opening gifts, my cousin stood up and made a dramatic announcement to the entire room that she was officially claiming the name for her baby. The room went silent, Several guests left early, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. That evening, I received a call from her husband. He was mortified by her behavior and confessed that she had never mentioned this name before, learning we had chosen it. He explained that this wasn't the first time she had fabricated stories to get her way, and he was becoming increasingly concerned about her pattern of lying. Despite everyone's objections, my cousin went ahead and used the name when her son was born. It created awkward situations at family gatherings, with relatives having to distinguish between big name and little name when referring to our boys. 3 months after her baby was born, her husband discovered she had been lying about numerous other things throughout their marriage. The name incident had prompted him to pay closer attention to her behavior patterns, leading him to uncover several significant deceptions. He filed for divorce, gaining primary custody due to evidence of her unstable behavior. Now, 2 years later, she's still telling anyone who will listen that I maliciously stole her dream baby name, forcing her to look unstable in front of her husband, which caused their divorce. Some family members think I should have just picked a different name to keep the peace, saying I indirectly contributed to breaking up her marriage. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. Your cousin sounds like she needs professional help. Who throws a tantrum at someone else's baby shower over a name? Her husband discovering her other lies shows this was part of a larger pattern of behavior. You didn't cause her divorce. Her own actions did. You're not in the wrong. The level of entitlement is astounding. You can't steal a name that was never yours, and you certainly can't claim ownership of a name you never expressed interest in before. Her husband leaving her over discovering multiple lies is completely separate from the name issue. She's just trying to blame you for the consequences of her own actions. You're not in the wrong. The fact that her own husband had to apologize for her behavior and admitted she never mentioned the name before tells you everything you need to know. She created this entire drama herself, and her divorce was clearly about much bigger issues than a baby name. Next up, when my grandmother passed away last year, her will was very specific. She left her Victorian-style house to me, while my aunt received $350,000 in cash and investments. The reasoning was clear. I had spent years helping care for my grandmother, while my aunt rarely visited unless she needed money. My aunt was initially pleased with her inheritance, posting on social media about being financially blessed and planning early retirement. However, within 10 months, she had blown through every penny on luxury cars, designer clothes, and what she called investment opportunities, which turned out to be obvious scams. Once she ran out of money, she showed up at my doorstep with 3 suitcases, announcing she was moving in. Her logic? Since it was the family house, she had just as much right to live there as I did. When I refused, she went ballistic. First came the guilt trips. Long dramatic posts about greedy relatives and betraying family legacy. Then the harassment, showing up at my workplace, sending relatives to talk sense into me and leaving nasty notes on my door. I installed security cameras after she started threatening to take back what's rightfully hers. Last month, while I was at work, my elderly neighbor, who watches everything on our street like it's her personal TV show, called to tell me someone was trying to break into my house. She had hired a locksmith to change all the locks, telling him she was the homeowner who had lost her keys. Thanks to my security cameras and my neighbor's detailed play-by-play to the police, my aunt was caught red-handed. The locksmith turned out to be some random guy she found online who wasn't even licensed. She was arrested for attempted burglary and filing a false police report. After this incident, I decided to sell the house. The market was excellent, and I made a substantial profit. My aunt, now facing legal troubles and completely broke, has been bouncing between relatives' homes, staying until she wears out her welcome. The family is divided. Some say I should have just let her move in since the house has enough room. Others think she's finally facing the consequences of her poor choices. My aunt is telling everyone that I destroyed our family by having her arrested, instead of working things out privately. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. Your grandmother gave her $350,000 and you the house for a reason. She proved that reason right by blowing through all that money in less than a year. You didn't have her arrested. Her own actions did that. The fact that she tried to literally steal your house shows she hasn't learned anything. Everyone sucks. Your aunt was definitely wrong, but having a family member arrested is pretty extreme. There must have been other ways to handle this without involving the police. Now she has a criminal record and nowhere to live. You're not in the wrong. And can we talk about these relatives who think you should have just let her move in? Are any of them offering her a permanent place to stay? It's amazing how generous people can be with someone else's property. Next up, my stepbrother, 32 Mem, has always been what you'd politely call lacking in common sense. Despite numerous warnings from family members and clear instructions on the turkey fryer itself, he decided to set up his Thanksgiving deep fryer in his living room because it was too cold outside. Predictably, the whole thing went up in flames. The fire department said he was lucky to escape with his life. His entire house burned down, and that's when we discovered he had forgotten to pay his home insurance for the past 8 months because he was pretty sure nothing would happen. The day after the fire, he showed up at my apartment with 3 garbage bags full of salvaged belongings, announcing he was moving in. No request, no discussion, just an assumption that I'd house him indefinitely. Me alone in my 1-bedroom apartment. When I refused, explaining that my lease doesn't allow long-term guests and I value my privacy, he immediately called our parents. They started with the guilt trips about family obligation and how I have plenty of space. I don't. I stood firm, suggesting he use his savings to rent a place or stay at a motel until he figures things out. 3 days later at 2 a.m., I woke up to someone trying to pick my lock. Security cameras showed my stepbrother, clearly intoxicated, attempting to break in with what looked like a coat hanger. When police arrived, they ran his ID and discovered he had multiple outstanding warrants for unpaid traffic violations and missing court dates. He spent the weekend in jail, and now he's living in a budget motel, telling anyone who'll listen that his selfish stepsister ruined his life. According to him, if I had just been family and let him move in, none of this would have happened. Our parents are divided. My mom thinks I should have helped him get back on his feet, while his dad admits his son needs to face consequences for once. Extended family members keep sending me passive-aggressive messages about the importance of family in times of crisis. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. Your stepbrother isn't experiencing a streak of bad luck. He's experiencing the consequences of his own monumentally stupid decisions. Deep frying a turkey inside is Darwin Award-level thinking. You're not responsible for housing someone who can't be trusted to follow basic safety instructions. You're not in the wrong. A fire caused by deep frying a turkey indoors wasn't enough of a wake-up call for him to start making better decisions. Instead, he doubled down by trying to break into your apartment while drunk with outstanding warrants. He needs professional help, not an enabler. Everyone sucks. While your stepbrother made terrible choices, leaving family homeless feels cruel. You could have offered a temporary arrangement with strict conditions. Now he's in an even worse situation because you wouldn't help when he needed it most.